We're having a fun time now. Who's next?
I don't believe your fairy tales if that makes me
Hi,
an idiot. Hi, David.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Hey.
I'm a first-time caller and first-time viewer. Actually, my question is, rather than attacking Christianity and what so many people do believe, what do you base our existence on and from whence we came?
Our existence on? Okay.
Where do we come from?
Okay. I think I hate to talk for myself and somebody else at the same time, but only one of us can be flapping our gums at once. I think it's safe to say Matt and I both think that science is the most effective way that human beings have of finding out what's true, and the current scientific consensus explanation for how human beings came about is evolution.
Okay.
I would point out quickly that my atheism is not dependent upon evolution, upon abiogenesis, upon the Big Bang, and it's not dependent upon any particular explanation. Even if all of those turned out to be completely wrong, that still doesn't justify any claims about a God. My atheism is the direct result of a lack of evidence to support claims about various God hypotheses, and that's it. There's more to it. But
it is
to imply that I think that Christianity and other religions imply that they have answers that aren't answers at all. They're big non-answers. That like, oh, God created us. Well, that doesn't really answer anything or provide you with any new information. And it certainly saying it doesn't make it more viable of an explanation, even though I don't think it's an explanation at all, than a scientific explanation like evolution.
Yeah, but and I want to step in and say, caller, it's a completely fair question on your part, right? Most people have the assumption that you need, that you either need or that most people just get their ideas about the origin of humanity, the idea about purpose of life, their ideas about ethics and morality and all that kind of stuff from a religion, and we're people that don't have one. It's completely fair and reasonable to ask us what our answers to those things are, right? And that's what we're going about doing. But Matt's just pointing out, all that atheism is the lack of theism, right? The lack of belief in any gods. Where you go from that is kind of open-ended. There's these people out there called Raelians who are atheists who believe that humans were planted on the earth by space aliens. Now we're not Raelians, and speaking personally, I think they're full of it. But that's all. I mean, the only thing we share in common with them is we happen to not believe in any gods. Okay?
I have no problem discussing evolution in a limited sense, but I'm not a scientist. And the bigger point that needs to be made over and over and over again is that atheism has no dogma, no tenets, no required beliefs. It has no dependency upon evolution, and it doesn't pretend to offer answers. Atheism isn't some robust philosophy that says, "Ooh, here's your answer to where we came from. It's evolution." That's not the case. It is the case that most reasonable, educated people who would identify themselves as atheists probably accept the theory of evolution because, well, it's a fact. Now, human descent, I realize that you can fine-tune arguments about that, but I mean, evolution itself is a fact.
What would be the definition of faith, and where did that word come from?
Now we're talking
and
about.
Does it have any application in your?
If we're talking about religious faith, right? The problem with the word faith is, if you look in a dictionary, it can cover anything from an assumption that some really reliable thing is going to go your way, right? Like the faith that when you sit in a chair, it's going to hold you up. Because 999 times out of 1,000, it does. Probably more than that. I'm just throwing some numbers out there. But at the other end of the scale, in the religious sense, faith can be belief in some proposition in spite of the total lack of evidence that that proposition is true, or even in the direct face of disconfirming evidence, right? So there's a really wide range of ways that that's used. And when we get into debates with believers on our show or about faith, they generally play this little word game where they try to establish that this really weak kind of faith is reasonable. Therefore, their incredibly extreme kind of faith is reasonable.
Yeah, I tend to avoid it by going, my definition of faith is belief in something without sufficient evidence to justify it or in the face of evidence to the contrary. And if somebody, and that faith plays no part in my life at all anymore. I used to be a Christian for years, but that type of faith doesn't exist in my life anymore. Those things that that some people might try to refer to as faith in the weak sense that Jeff was talking about. Well, you have faith the sun will come up tomorrow. No, I don't. I have a reasonable expectation based on an amazingly stacked history of continuing occurrence.
Well, but you hope it does.
Sure, yeah. I'd very much like for it to come up. I don't.
Okay.
It's in that type of thing is in such a situation where it would take more faith in the strictest sense to believe that the sun's not going to come up tomorrow than it is. Once you've got good scientific evidence and a basis of predictions that have continually come true. I mean, every day for my entire life, the sun has come up, or more accurately, the Earth has rotated so that it appears that the sun comes up. When you're in that situation, it's certain. I think it's a disservice to what people might consider to be faith to call belief that the sun's going to come up faith.
Okay, fair enough. And you said you were a Christian. What life experience changed in your life to change you to be atheist or agnostic or both?
I was raised a Southern Baptist, and I was active in church during my youth and everything else. I spent a period of time in the Navy and away from church, and I decided later on that perhaps I might have been called to preach, as I had felt feelings along those lines when I was a kid. So I decided, according to 1 Peter 3:15, to always be ready to provide the answer for the faith that's within you, to actually begin studying. And over the course of about 2 or 3 years of study, both into the Bible in its original languages as much as possible, because I don't speak or read all of them, or any of them fluently, so it was a long study, but also philosophical issues concerning the arguments for and against the existence of any God. And the bulk of the evidence over time just became such that I was initially at a position where I need to reject Christianity because it's obviously not true, but I can't necessarily reject all these other beliefs. So then you start going down the line and taking a look at others, and you realize that what you're seeing is part of a bigger pattern, and that is this notion of men creating religion to provide them comforting answers to questions that they don't have real answers for. That's not the only reason for religion, and I don't want to necessarily shoehorn it down, but I didn't make a leap from Christianity to atheism because of any trauma. I wasn't mad at the church. I wasn't ever molested. I don't have bad feelings towards my parents or anybody else who believes. It was simply study and a complete lack of evidence.